You know how to use this?
Kinda. I've covered wars, you know. Look, after I'm through helping you, you and I are gonna have a nice little chat.
Zombies. One of the most common and oversaturated monster types in media. You know them, I know them. Despite their frequent overuse, zombies remain my favourite type of monster in games and movies alike. They make great fodder for the slaughter. Games such as Resident Evil and Left 4 Dead are fantastic in allowing you to live out the fantasy of playing in a zombie-infested world. But my personal favourite zombie franchise has always been Dead Rising. Developed and released by Capcom back in 2006, Dead Rising was probably the most innovative zombie game at the time of its release. Renowned for its substantial sandbox world and the massive amounts of zombies that could appear on screen, this thing was highly praised by critics and users alike. Since its release, it has been ported to the Xbox 360, the PS3, Microsoft Windows, Xbox One, PS4, and was even remade for the Wii and iOS. It also spawned a whole new franchise and a bunch of movies that didn't do too well. Dead Rising and its main protagonist are so coveted by users that as of March 2021, the original game has sold 14 million units, which is insane. Although the subsequent games in the series kept on innovating, this one is still regarded as one of the best. But why is that? Well, as the old saying goes, if you don't try, you'll never know. So let's get our game on and go play Dead Rising. Right, so the story centers around Frank West, a photojournalist who has come to the fictional town of Willamette in Colorado to investigate the town being quarantined by the military. After some eventful sightseeing in the sky, he gets dropped off at the local mall. While he's inside, the mall gets overrun with hordes of flesh-eating zombies. Now trapped, and with only 3 days before his ride comes back, Frank has to work alongside DHS agents Brad and Jesse in order to find out just what the hell is going on. Throughout the story, you'll uncover conspiracies involving murder, mass cattle production, and revenge. It's a pretty decent story, with some likable characters. I would even go so far as to say that this game is the most grounded in the series in terms of its story and setting when compared to the others. The story has multiple endings and even a secret hidden ending, which shows how the story canonically concludes. Frank is the standout character, voiced by Terrence J. Rotolo, who just so happened to voice William Birkin in numerous iterations of Resident Evil 2's storyline.
Coincidence? I think not!
He does a great job with Frank. You really get the feeling that Frank is this confident and experienced journalist who has suddenly had his world flipped upside down and is now completely out of his element.
Well, we're up to our necks in zombies. Yeah, I think I appreciate the situation just fine.
Frank is hands down the best character in the entire series. He's so popular that he even got his own song named after him and made 2 appearances in the Marvel vs. Capcom series. You've also got voice actors Laura Napoli, TJ Storm, Alex Ferdinands, and even Steve Bloom shows up a few times as some of the optional bosses. Speaking of which, the bosses, or psychopaths as they're referred to in the game, are usually depicted as over-the-top folk who have gone mad amidst the chaos that has fallen upon the town. The series would become infamous for this trend, which only got more and more ridiculous as time went on. Though some of them do feel more believable in this game, like this gun store owner because he doesn't know who he can trust. Overall, it is a solid story with a likable voice cast that is sure to get you invested. On a visual level, the game looks really good, especially for the time. I mean, in 2006, we had games like Gears of War, Oblivion, and Hitman Blood Money. And while all of those look great in their own way, Dead Rising still manages to stand on its own undead feet. This thing runs on the MT Framework engine, which was supposedly used on Lost Planet and Devil May Cry 4. It runs pretty smoothly, and can now be run at 60 FPS, which is especially impressive for the time, considering just how many zombies the game is able to render on screen, which I think is impressive even by today's standards. Characters are modelled pretty well, and the lighting is decent too. When killing zombies, you'll see a decent amount of blood spatter and gore. There is a few too many loading screens for my liking, but they are pretty quick, so it's not all bad. I also noticed some clipping with character models, but overall, it was nothing game-breaking. Now this game is a third-person action-adventure sandbox, with some light RPG elements. During gameplay, you can level up in order to increase your damage output, increase your health and inventory space, and even learn some kick-ass new moves. One of my favourites, which just looks ridiculous, is this one where you can just crouch walk over a huge crowd of zombies. Like, it's just so funny to watch. Oh yeah, leveling up also increases your movement speed. Instead of XP, you instead gain PP. You gain PP from doing pretty much anything, from rescuing survivors to defeating bosses and killing a certain number of zombies. You gotta be careful though, as zombies do like to grab hold of you, forcing you into a button prompt in order to get them off. Speaking of which, the AI for survivors is piss poor, and they'll frequently get stuck and outright mullered by the zombies. Make sure to keep extra weapons and food on you to keep them alive. It's not game breaking though, and instead it's just a symptom of being the first game in a series trying to find its footing. Thankfully, a lot of the game's problems will be ironed out in future installments. You can also get extra PP from using Frank's camera, when you see these little prompts pop up on screen called PP stickers. Weapons are typically broken up into either melee or ranged categories. Melee weapons have a certain number of hit points before they break, and guns can't be reloaded. But most items do respawn once you re-enter the area that you found them in, which is nice. My biggest gripe with the gameplay is how you can't move while aiming a gun, as the triggers on the controller are mapped to either your weapons or your camera. You can also find these magazines around the mall, which give you extra buffs at the cost of taking up an inventory slot. There's different outfits that you can dress up in order to make Frank look pretty snazzy. As I said earlier, you can find survivors around the mall and escort them back to the security room for large amounts of PP. The security room is where you'll most often save the game, so be sure to come back here often, because you can lose your progress, as there is no autosave feature. You can also save at cubicles that you find around the mall. When you're on a mission, you can set markers in order to point you in the direction of your objective, which is rather helpful, since you get an in-game map at the start. Since Frank has only 72 hours to solve the case, you've got a constantly ticking clock in the background, reminding you of just how limited your time here is. Over time, new areas will open up to you, so make sure to explore thoroughly. You will get calls on a radio for new missions, so be sure to answer them frequently. To refill your health, you eat whatever you can find in the world. If you ever find one of these blenders, then be sure to put it to good use, as you can combine different items to make drinks that give you insane buffs and tons of health. The one that makes you move really fast is by far the best. Then there are the bosses, or psychopaths as the game calls them. These guys have tons of health, and they are the main reason why you'll want to level up, as they can do a shit ton of damage. Most of them involve baiting and or avoiding their attacks before getting in close in order to dish out some sweet zombie justice. Or, you could just cheese them all with Mega Man's Mega Buster. To get this thing, you simply need to get the Zombie Genocider achievement, which involves killing a shit ton of zombies. Which is really easy if you use the cars in the underground. This is probably a good time to talk about the game's New Game Plus mode, which lets you replay with your current level and stats. So get that achievement, and then get the Mega Buster, and go to town. The bosses are worth fighting, as some of them drop really powerful and unique weapons, so you'll want to fight as many as you can. Although you do get notified about most survivors and psychos on your radio, some are hidden, so you're going to have to go out of your way if you want to find them all. The game also has an overtime mode if you complete the requirements to get the good ending, which is how you unlock the canonical ending. It should go without saying, but there are obviously non-canon bad endings depending on your actions throughout the story. There's also a survival mode, allowing you to hold out in the mall for as long as you can. Psychos will spawn in throughout, and drop extra goodies when playing, which you will need to gather in order to maintain Frank's hunger level. As you can tell, there's plenty of replay value, and even if you want to spend hours just slaughtering zombies with all manner of mundane items, it'll be a long time before you get bored. Weapons and item sounds are decent, but nothing spectacular. It's the music that shines through here. The soundtrack for this game is actually really varied. Composed by Hideki Okugawa and Mariko Suzuki, you've got quite the range of music. Besides the typical shopping mall music that'll play in the background during gameplay, you will also hear rock music, country music, as well as several tracks that perfectly convey the themes of tragedy and tension. Every piece perfectly fits the tone of the scene they appear in and tells you something about the characters. My favourite has to be the main menu theme, which was reused for the sequel. It's beautifully eerie and ominous, and really unnerved me when I played this thing for the first time. My only real issue that I have with this game is the inability to move while aiming, but it's not really too bad, since this is the only game that this happens in, and was altered for future installments. I would have also liked the ability to skip time, as sometimes I just can't be bothered spending my time rounding up survivors while waiting for the next story mission. But that doesn't make the game unplayable or even unenjoyable. I'd also argue that this is probably the hardest game in the series, which is fair enough, as Capcom was still finding their footing when they made this thing. Even to this day though, this game remains the sole reason as to why I got an Xbox 360 back in the day. And the memories I have with this thing, and my love for the series as a whole, started right here.
Superhero landing!
Okay, thanks for watching my little ramble on one of the most fun and innovative zombie games of all time. I had a ton of fun revisiting this gem, and I'm stoked to be looking back at the rest of the series. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did and want to see more, then don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more videos like this one in the future. Be sure to stick around for the next video when we tackle the sequel, Dead Rising 2. Now until next time, thank you very much for watching, and always remember to work hard and play harder. GG.